Okay, camera's running. Just about out to runway 22. What's the temperature? What's the temperature? It says so on here somewhere. It's 43 degrees out, so the snow that you're seeing is all kind of melting away. We're just riding out here for a run up, and we're just going to fly around local area.
Cool.
I'm talking to the camera.
I like it.
I have a passenger today. You may have noticed this is my cousin-in-law from Missouri. Is that right? Missouri?
Missouri, yeah.
You say Missouri or Missouri?
Missouri.
I thought it was Missouri.
It was originally Missouri, so we're going to go with that.
Yeah, we just call it Big Mo.
I switched it to Missouri, yeah.
All right, so here, what we do out here, this is a, engine has two spark plugs per cylinder. And you can turn off so you'll have, in each cylinder you're going to have two spark plugs. One is driven by this ignition system, the other one's driven by this one. So what we do now is we want to make sure they're both working. So we rev it up to 4,000 RPM, which will be showing up right here. And when you take away half the spark, there should be some level of RPM drop, maybe about 75 to 80 RPM. You're allowed up, I think, to 180 or some incredible amount like that. And the way you do that, get up to about 4,000 here, working our way up. Here it comes, eventually. All right. Now we just got weather too. Okay, so off, and that dropped 60, 70, up, and then try the other one, should do the same. And it was about 60 or 70. So that's checking both magneto systems are working and all the spark plugs are working and everything. And that's really what we're interested in the most. But we can go ahead and do our checklist. We have a checklist for this. So let's see, I have to go to...
What's your temperature up to now?
What has happened, it's up to, I'm blind, 134. Remember how it just had that little green arc? That little green arc was stopping me. It wouldn't stop me, but as long as the oil's not up to 120, you want to keep it that little green arc. And once it gets above 120, that gives you the full arc, and that means you're ready to go. And the point of all that is it's a very modern engine, and it's built like a Swiss watch. There's very, very tight tolerances, and there's all kinds of dissimilar metals. So they don't all expand at the same rate, but they're all really tight together. And at 120 degrees, everything is expanded. If you start revving it up real hard at 70 or 80 degrees and it's, something's expanding and something's not, you're doing long-term damage to the engine.
Sure, yeah.
So you sit and wait for that. And that's why I have it on the preheater. It's much faster than having to sit on a cold day, although it's not that cold today, but 20 degrees, sitting there idling, waiting for that to heat up would take literally forever. Not literally, that's Joe Biden literally. It would take a long time. So that's why we have preheater on it.
Yep.
And now you can see that this is green now, that purple went away. That means we have weather information now. And I don't know if there's any in the country. Well, we have just around us, and there's really nothing around us, but you'd see thunderstorms and things like that. It'll load more and more of that stuff. This is traffic. These are other airplanes 500 feet above us, which is pretty low. They might be helicopters, but that's not very high up. So there's a lot of information on this little screen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through my checklist, which is basically, can I move the stick around and do things on the wings move when I move the stick around?
Yep.
Flaps are up, and then we go left to right. We got everything on here. We got a course plotted in. I'm going to go ahead to tower, even though we're not talking to him yet. That's the next call I'm going to make. It's the same guy. They just use a different frequency. And I always have to check to make sure I have this fuel pump fuse in, because I'll take that out. If I'm running this to work on the avionics or whatever, I take it out because I don't want that fuel pump just cranking along, but I got to remember to put it back in. Trim is already set, avionics are on. We don't have any nav lights, don't have landing lights, autopilot's always on. Choke is back in. We're latched. I always check this latch. I check this latch as many times as I can think of it, because you don't want to take off with that latch unlatched. The canopy will fly up a little bit. It'll get really windy and noisy in here. And
yeah, it'll be bad.
It's pretty nasty, yeah. I mean, the plane will fly, but it gets very loud. All kinds of weird shit happening. So, guess we're ready to go. Doesn't look like we're going to have to wait. He's going to give us an immediate clearance. There's just nobody else out here.
Yeah.
Old Tower, experimental 284 Delta Golf. Ready for takeoff. Runway 22 Alpha 1, departing DFR westbound.
Alright, 594 Juliet, thanks once again. We're leaving the Delta to the north.
Experimental 4 Delta Golf for runway 22, clear for takeoff for right turn westbound approved.
4 Delta Golf, clear for takeoff 22 with the right turnout. I botched that one.
45 Juliet,
that wasn't quite what I wanted to say.
45 Juliet, good day.
Experimental 4 Delta Golf, just keep your eyes open for a helicopter on a practice approach, localizer approach to runway 4. They're still a ways out, but I might catch sight of them on your upwind.
4 Delta copy. We'll probably just make an early turn to the west. There we go.
experimental traffic departing runway 22 at this time. They'll be a westbound departure and are making an early turnout.
Going up.
We'll be looking for that traffic, thank you.
Ohio.
Now our house is right off the end of the runway here. See that neighborhood over there? We're not going to go over it because we got to get out of the way of this helicopter. He's pretty far out, but
Yeah.
I told him I'd get out of the way, so we'll go ahead and get out of the way. There it is over there. That's how close we live to the airport.
Really close to home.
Yep.
That's great. And there's Columbus.
Old Tower, helicopter 44 Hotel Golf. We are 2 miles final.
Okay, he wasn't that far out.
Yeah, 44
Oh, I see him.
Golf, that traffic is no factor for you. They're already in their westbound turn. How would you like to terminate this approach?
I can see him.
I'd like to go mid.
Helicopter out there. You can see the rotors, the sun flicking off the rotors.
44 Golf.
yeah.
Report executing your missed approach to a left turn to a heading of 280 and contact Columbus on 32.3.
280, 4 Hotel Golf, thanks.
He's 4 Hotel Golf and we're 4 Delta Golf, is why I kept thinking he was talking to us. You ought to be able to see downtown over your right shoulder.
Yep. There it is. Bird's eye view right there.
That's not a bad day.
No.
Get a haze layer like in the summer, you typically have a haze layer like this. When you get to bitter cold, that's when you get to really clear days, is when it's bitter cold. But this thing leaks air. I mean, it's hard to get warm in here.
Helicopter 44 Hotel Golf, going miss, runway 4.
44 Golf, left turn at 280 and contact departure.
Left turn 280, contact departure, 4 Hotel Golf.
Alrighty, so I'm going to slow her down. Go ahead and put your hand, whichever hand you want, on the stick. Alright, now very gently, it's a light grip, very light grip. And just kind of, let's go to the left, just kind of push it. That's all it takes is a little bit of pressure. It's not really a movement,
Right.
it's more of a pressure. Heat, where's the heat? There's the heat. Don't get much heat, but we get some.
A little bit from the engine.
Yep. So if you want to turn back to the right, it's the same thing. Just very
real,
gentle.
real subtle.
Yeah, just real light pressure. That's all you really need. You can do more. It's just, but generally if you're flying a long trip, it's very gentle turns. If you're out just fooling around, here, I'll take it. I mean, I got it. It'll turn.
Yeah.
And there's that, look at that round barn. That's a training barn.
Okay.
Those are really, really rare.
Huh.
They just, that was, oh, I forget the name of it now. They had, those high-end race trainers. I mean, they had, so they could do indoor training. In the bad weather, they could trot them and everything indoors.
Oh, I see the outdoor track too.
I'm trying to remember the name of the place now. Oh well, it'll come to me. Always does. The way you know where you're going, so here's our compass.
Okay.
So we're headed just a little bit north or west, and you want to change course, it'll just kind of come around.
Nice.
Like that. This one's telling us that we're at 3160 feet. And we are actually descending a little bit, about 200 foot per minute. That's what this is telling you. So right there, that's level. That's about 0 foot per minute, that one right there.
Yeah.
And then you can read the number there. And this is airspeed. And then the rest of this, all the engine stuff. And then there's another airplane. Now he's 500 feet below us and climbing. And he is about 3 miles away. I should be able to see him, but it's really hard to see him.
It's hazy.
He's catching up with us. He's 400 feet below. And I think he's catching up with us speed-wise, so he'll be out there off our left wing. Kind of a little choppy today.
Yeah.
That traffic.
Creek down there.
Huh?
See the creek down in
Yep.
the valley.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to see that guy. He's only 2 miles away. I ought to be able to see him.
Straight ahead.
He'll be,
To the left.
he's right here. So if you look at the wing, he's going to be a little bit off the back of the wing. And he's almost our altitude now, so he should be right hanging out there with us.
I see a helicopter.
Oh, well, that might be it. Oh, there he is. Yeah, I see him up above the horizon.
Yep.
That's that guy. It's really nice to know they're there.
Yes.
Well, before this stuff, there were so many things you didn't even know were there.
Oh, man.
This stuff is very, very nice.
Did they have that kind of stuff in like World War II?
This? No.
No, not at all.
Not this, no.
Just some
Used your eyes.
primitive.
Yeah, well, he's getting kind of close to us. I'm going to give him a little room. He's within a mile now.
Must have a destination.
We're just flying. I don't know where he's going. We're not going anywhere. I mean, I could just as easily turn away from him. See ya.
Yeah. Up here you can go up, down, all around.
Oh yeah, anything you want to do. Wide open out here. And we're outside of the tower. We're outside of Bolton's airspace, so he doesn't care what we're doing anymore. So we'll call on the way back in.
That I-70?
Yeah. You can't, that's what the ring is. You can't just go barreling into an airport. Now the airport over there is uncontrolled. It's got no special airspace. You can barrel right into that. There's no control tower.
Oh.
This is Bolton here. They have a control tower, so you got to call him before you get inside his space. And then the bigger ring you saw that was around Port Columbus, you got to call approach to get in there too. You can't just go barreling on in there. And then if you go down to Cincinnati, and I don't know if Cleveland still has a Class B, but I think Cincinnati does. That's real high end. Sometimes they just won't even let you come in.
Huh.
So they just don't want you fooling around near an airport. So you can go over it. It'll have a ceiling, like, oh, you got to be at least 4,000 feet to just fly over it. You don't need to call us you're that high because nobody's taking off straight up.
Right.
So it works out okay. So that's all the stuff that's really, you used to have maps and try to figure out where you are. Boy, am I inside that line or outside? Now I can just see it. I can see exactly where I am. And it even tells me, this little block here, if I'm pointed at controlled airspace, like I'm going to go in it, it'll say you're like 2 miles away, or you're over it, or you're under it, just so you don't accidentally drive into it. Because yeah, FAA kind of frowns on that kind of thing. I mean, they don't want you running into airliners, basically.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a good
Kind
thing.
of like running into a bus or a barge.
Yeah, you just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just follow along that and you get home.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to make it on a tank of gas though.
No.
Well, we only got 11 gallons now.
So if you were going to Missouri, you'd have to
I'd have to stop probably at least once.
Yeah.
I can go about, before I really need to start thinking about, I'll go like 3 hours because it's got a 4-hour range and I'd like to have a lot of reserve. So
Right.
I could go 3.5 hours and that's 300 miles. That's nautical miles, which is more like 320 statute miles, and you're not much further than that, really. So it could get pretty close. But on the way out there, you'd have a headwind the whole way. It's almost always out of the west.
Oh yeah.
So you have to consider that because
Right.
you know we're doing 101 knots through the air. We're only doing 92 across the ground because we have a wind component. We have about 12 knots right on our.
It's coming at 279
It's coming in at an angle, so some of it's blowing us to the right, and some of it's slowing us down, and yet we're losing 10 knots to it. Now, if we turn around, that number's going to jump up. This will stay the same. We're always going the same speed through the air. It's across the ground. The wind factors into that. If we turn around right now, we probably hit 100 knots.
Kind of like autocorrect.
So the wind is important. If it gets too windy, it gets hard to land. And if it gets too windy, you're not going to go as far as you might have thought you were on your gas. So you got to really pay attention to that because you can't just pull into a Pilot Flying J. There, see, we went from 90 to 103 just by turning around. And I could probably get a wee bit more. It's kind of quartering on us, so we're not getting the full effect of it. Probably get another knot or two, just getting it right behind us. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's not super fast, but we're not burning a lot of gas either. We could be going a lot faster, and I probably should if I'm trying to exercise the engine. So, but when I put in that gas, it wants to go faster, right?
Right.
Well, the wing says, oh goody, I've got more lift. So now all of a sudden we're climbing, and I don't want to. I also don't want to fly around pushing the stick forward. That's what the trim is for. So if I want to take that climb out of there, I push trim down. Watch what happens.
It levels out.
Well, or I can go all the way past it, see? I can go up, I can go down. So that's what the trim is. There's a little tab on the back that moves up and down.
Like on a boat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's for a different reason, but
Right.
it's the same concept. Definitely the same concept.
Yeah.
And the autopilot can do that for me. If I just turn on the autopilot, that's going to just fly straight and level. And now it's going to try to stay at 3,000 feet. So if it gets an updraft, it's going to push the nose down. And if it pushes it down enough, it'll move the trim so it doesn't have to keep pushing. Because this has got a clutch. By law, this has a clutch in it that you can override without a whole lot of effort. So if you feel there's some resistance on it, but I feel clicking, that's the clutch jumping. So I can still overpower the autopilot. Reason for that is the autopilot goes crazy and locks up your controls, you can still fly it. Well, because it has that clutch, if there's too much updraft and it can't get enough trim, or it's trying to push the nose down and that clutch starts to slip, it'll go ahead and put in down trim so it doesn't slip that clutch. And I'll get a little warning on here, clutch slip, that kind of thing. It's very handy in the summer where you're doing a lot of up and down. Just it's so hot, you get out the thermals coming up.
Yeah, it drives you up almost.
Yep, and you get a downdraft. So you'll be flying along on the autopilot, and all of a sudden you're doing 120 knots. It's because you're in a updraft and it's pointing the nose down, trying to stay where we are. Then you're looking at, man, I'm only doing 85 knots. You're in a downdraft and it's trying to climb out of it.
So how many miles per hour are we going?
Well, we're doing 110 knots. That's about, I just estimate, about 121 miles an hour. Knots are slower than miles per hour. It's in the yellow now. What the yellow tells you, if it's really turbulent, you're really getting bounced around, you want to get down in the green. Down in the green, you're more or less guaranteed that no matter how strong the gust is, it's not going to break the wings off. You get up into the yellow, they're saying if you got a strong enough gust, you're going to lose a wing. That's not a good thing. So when it's smooth like this, it's no big deal.
Right.
But I've had days that were so bumpy, I'm bouncing against the canopy. You slow down into the green. Red is never exceed.
Right.
Red is you really just don't want to go there.
Right. Stop.
Yeah, stop going so fast. You're going to rip the wings right off of it. That was a little bump.
Air bump?
Yeah. It's not too bad. It can be really bad in the summer. Now let's see. Let's do this. Let's say map. I want to go direct to a recent airport. This is Madison County, which is only 8 miles. It's over that way. So I'm going to say direct to that, and then I'm going to tell the autopilot I want to go nav. Oh, I got to turn off level. There it goes. Now it's good. Now it's going to follow that. I can tell it I want you to hold the altitude we're at, so I don't have to do that anymore. And now it's going to fly directly to that airport. The other thing I can do is tell it I want to do track. So I'm going to put it in track mode. I want to line it up where we are first. And what track mode does is I just say I want to go over here and follow that blue line. Or I want to go back over here, follow that blue line. So it's going to follow that track exactly across the ground. It's going to compensate for the crosswind. It'll fly right down that line on the ground. Or you can put it on heading where it'll keep the same heading, but it'll let the crosswind blow you around. And the reason you would do that is if you're talking air traffic control, they give you vectors. They'll tell you fly heading 270. They've already calculated a little bit of a wind correction for you. So if you do track 270 and they're expecting it to drift because of the wind, you did it wrong. When they give you a vector, you go heading. If I'm trying to go someplace, that's right, I'm trying to get over that intersection, that jogger intersection, then I want track. So it'll go right where I point it. It'll go right over the top of that. Or you can just do nav. So we're kind of getting off our nav course now, so if I tell it nav, it's going to jump back over there and line up on that purple line and take us right to that airport. And it's not going to lose any altitude while it does it. I mean, normally when you're flying it by hand, you got to pull a little bit back on the stick. When you turn, you're using some of the lift component to do the turn, so you're losing some of the lift component that keeps you up in the air. So it's a very light back pressure, or the nose will drop. The autopilot does all that for you. If you could put in a route, I could put in a route down to Florida with all these waypoints, it would just fly itself down there. The only thing you can't put in the flight plan is altitude. It's just going to be whatever altitude you set it at. A more sophisticated, like an airliner, they'll say, well, I want you to climb to 32,000 feet here. When you get to this waypoint, I want you to descend to 25, and it'll do all that. That's much more sophisticated stuff. I don't really need all that. Don't really need all this. I just like having it. See here, it's going to try to intercept it. It's going to go straight at it, and when we get there, it'll turn back onto it. Theory.
And it will compensate for another airline or another plane, or is that on you?
It does, yeah, it doesn't know anything. It'll show them, and it won't show all of them. Right now, it only shows, by the end of year 2020, everybody has to have ADS-B. There are a lot of planes that won't want to, they're older planes, they're simple airplanes, and they're not going to want to put the money into it. So they just won't be able to go into Bolton or Port Columbus, but they can still be flying around here. So even after 2020, there's airplanes you got to be watching. It's not going to do anything. You know, if they have the equipment, it'll show them to me. And if it gets real close, it'll say caution traffic. You know, she'll say caution traffic.
Yeah.
But you still have to go around them yourself. It's not going to do that. This should straighten out. I'll follow along that line, but it probably won't. It's going to be crabbed a little bit off to the side. It's going to be crabbed this way as it goes down there because it's got to crab into the wind. And it figures that all out. You used to have to figure that stuff out for yourself. It does it all for you now. Now it's actually not going to line us up with the runway because I told it just go directly to it. That's the extended center line of the runway. So I could have told it go to this waypoint here and then fly to the airport, straight down, lined up. See how the airport's kind of at an angle to us?
Right, yeah.
So you wouldn't want to land from here, but you could get into the landing pattern from here. Landing pattern is kind of a rectangle you fly around. It's very predictable. People are, you know, you got 4 legs. You got the downwind
like pulling
leg.
in a parking lot.
Well, yeah.
And you go around the edge.
If everybody's just randomly coming in and landing, you don't know where to look for them. You know, and there's no control tower here, so you've got to look for them. You got to talk to them. You got to listen for them. You got to look for them. So you kind of know they're going to be somewhere within that rectangle around the airport, not just coming in from weird-ass angle like we're doing.
Right.
You know,
right.
we're not going to get much closer. As a matter of fact, we're going to track away from it.
So you can land and take off there.
Yep, as many times as I want. And that's what I do when I practice. I'll come out to this airport here so I don't have to deal with the control tower and just do some practice landings.
Gotcha.
This is West Jefferson. Nice little town.
Yep. Like all the water's running pretty nicely into all the...
Yeah, they prepare the fields differently now. They cut these trenches in them.
Yeah.
That's just natural. You can tell by the curves. But some of these fields, you see where they put like crosses in them, just hash marks. The water just drains better, I guess. I don't know. I'm no farmer. But you can see where it's holding the water.
Yep, definitely is.
That's Madison Lake. That's just, I mean, we don't have any natural lakes in Ohio. They're all reservoirs.
Yeah.
And that's, it's very shallow. It's a lousy place to fish.
Yeah.
I have some stories about the people we run into there.
Yeah.
It's pretty redneckian. It's not much heat, is it? Well, at this altitude, it's 33 degrees now, so we're getting some heat, because that's coming out at about 50-something.
Yeah.
It's better than the 30-something. So now if I wanted to go back, I just say I want to go direct to, and on my recent list should be the one we just left from, direct to, and it's set the course, and actually, are we still on nav? No, we're on track. So if I hit nav, it's going to take us back towards Bolton. And it's 12.8 miles away, nautical miles. It's a nice gentle turn. You can configure it to make a really steep turn if you want to. And this is a relatively steep turn for something like a Cessna. But these airplanes are very, very nimble.
Yeah.
So you tend to, they just move around a little easier. A Cessna is kind of like you turn, hope it turns. This is, you know, you felt it. It's just that least little pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot at all.
I'm also responsible for the rudder. It'll turn the ailerons, but it won't use the rudder, which means the tail kind of drops into the turn. This airplane doesn't do it a whole lot, but a longer airplane would. You know, it'd be kind of, it's turning, but the tail's hanging down in the turn. You put a little rudder in, it picks that tail back up. And the autopilot doesn't do that for you, but we don't need it to. That grain elevator there is Lily, there's a little town there, well, it's not even a town. There's a grain elevator and some houses. It's called Lily Chapel. And we use that as a reporting point. So when I call the tower to tell him we're coming back in, he doesn't know where we are. He doesn't have any radar.
Right.
He has no idea where we are. So I'm going to call the tower and say, 284 Delta Golf over Lily Chapel, so he knows where we are. We took off on 22, so what he's going to do is he's going to ask us to enter a right downwind for runway 22, report midfield. I mean, there's only about 6 different things they can say.
Yeah.
So at your home airport, you pretty much know what they're going to say. Every now and then, if there's a lot of traffic, he'll have planes on both sides of the runway, and he may tell you something you're not ready for. So you still, you know, you think you know what he's going to say, but you still got to pay attention, because he may trip you up and say there's a helicopter in front of you or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when I don't fly, I don't really forget how to fly the airplane. What gets sloppy, I get sloppy talking on the radio.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of a procedure, there's a kind of a rigid way you do it, and there, see now, we're 3 minutes away from Class D, which is that airspace around Bolton. And so within 2 minutes, we're going to be in that unless we go over it or under it or around it. So that's a nice little warning, because you don't want to go barreling into one of those things. Get the FAA, they'll give you a call. The control tower will want to talk to you first. They'll give you a phone number. Hey, call us. You kind of screwed up. Uh-oh. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I mean, I'm not a professional pilot, so suspending my license would be inconvenient, but it wouldn't wreck my career. But professional pilot, they can't afford that kind of thing.
Right.
They got to be very, very, very careful.
Yeah, got to be on point with it for sure.
So my prediction was enter right downwind 22, report midfield. Or he may just say report midfield right downwind for 22. Autopilot's working now. You can see how it moves.
Yeah.
See how it's working.
Compensating.
Yeah, you can't do it that fast yourself. It's much faster to respond.
Huh.
But you can feel it working.
Fulton Tower, experimental 284 Delta Golf, Lily Chapel, inbound landing.
Experimental 284 Delta Golf, Bolton Tower from Lily Chapel, enter a right downwind, runway 22, and report midfield. Wind is 260 at 06, altimeter 3019er.
Enter right downwind 22, report midfield, 4 Delta Golf.
Gotta try to remember it. When he starts tacking stuff on the end, my short-term memory is, oh shoot, am I gonna be able to tell him what it's This one I already knew, but sometimes they'll read off a spiel, and I'm like, slow down.
Yeah.
And I have had to slow down. I got to where I was talking to them faster than they could follow me, and they're professionals. So I think last year I started trying to consciously slow down the way I talk to them.
Did they come back and say you need to slow down?
Yeah, they were missing things. And,
Yeah.
These guys sometimes, like, if they don't really get as busy as they did 15, 20 years ago, and they would be like rapid fire, and you had to really be paying attention. They've slowed down too now.
Yeah.
And you get less mistakes that way, because he's told me before, something that just didn't make any sense, like enter for the wrong runway, I would have had to cross over the airport to turn and land. So I'm like, are you sure that's what you want me? No, that's not what I meant. It's my mistake.
Yeah.
Do this instead. So they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's why you read back to them. If he said, right downwind 22, and I said, okay, left downwind 4, he would have caught that.
Yeah.
And said, no, that's not what I said. I mean, that would be a pretty blatant mistake. They're usually more subtle mistakes than that. You just repeat back to confirm that you got the right instructions.
Right.
It's not super important here, but it's much more important when you're flying around with the airliners. You're on instruments, and they're talking to a dozen different airplanes, and you got to be listening too. They call your tail number. You better be listening for it.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to call you 2 or 3 times. It pisses them right off. I mean, for good reason.
Yeah.
They've got other airplanes to work, and a lot of them are airliners.
They figure you're not paying attention if you don't respond the first time.
They don't like it, and there's a good reason for that. We're going to start going down here. So downwind, I told you about the pattern. Downwind runs opposite to the direction you're going to land. You land into the wind, so if you're going opposite direction, the wind is behind you, so you're going downwind. When we turn 90 degrees to the right to cross over to the final, it's called base leg. So you go down base final, and if we were going to cross over to the other side, you would be on the crosswind leg, and then you would go into downwind and then base. And it's just a big rectangle. I guess I should aim at midfield so I can report midfield. Pretty much wants me to be there. Not a bad way to travel, but I go about 3 hours and I start, looking for places to put my legs or to move around a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
And the autopilot is nice for that. I don't take a nap. I don't ignore the autopilot and take a nap, but I do kind of. I usually have my hand near it somewhere, unless I'm fiddling around with something. I generally have my hand resting on the stick in case the autopilot just said, the hell with all this. I don't want to mess around with it anymore. It's on you, boss. But it works pretty reliably. I've not had any trouble with the autopilot. I didn't think I would use it near as much as I do, because if I take my hands off this thing, it's not going to fly straight for very long.
Right.
See, it's already starting to turn. So this airplane always has to be under control. Something like a Cessna is much more stable. It'll plod right along.
But they got a nice little spot for some deer in that area.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's not why it's still there. I think they're trying to sell the land and they never harvested the corn. There's some right across the street from us. It's probably just going to get moldy and rot.
Fulton Tower, 4 Delta Golf, midfield right downwind 22.
Experimental 4 Delta Golf for runway 22, cleared to land.
Clear to land 22, 4 Delta Golf.
I think he was still looking for us. But that hesitation was he couldn't see us yet. And sometimes they'll say, yeah, not in sight, cleared to land. I was like, geez, I'd rather you could see me. I'd feel more comfortable about the whole thing. All right, I gotta get these flaps down. These slow us down, and they point the nose down a little bit. Makes it easier to see where you're going. So we're gonna turn right base when we get up here over the auto zone. Then we'll be on final, and I'm gonna land. I don't land right on the numbers. I go down pretty far because the taxiway is like half a mile down the runway. We don't have to land right on the numbers. Sometimes I do it just for practice, because on a short runway, you want to be able to land it right where you need it to land on a short runway. And you got this mile of a runway, which I need 20% of. So every now and then I'll practice landing on the numbers. What we're going to do today is there's bars. You see all the stripes under the 22?
Yep.
Then there's a 3-bar set, then there's a big solid set, and then the 2-bar set.
Yep.
We're going to land between the big solid set and the 2-bar set, and we're going to take that right turnoff down from there. There's no reason to taxi all that. Might as well just fly it down there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got people behind you. He's got other airplanes he's trying to land, so I land as efficiently as I can. I get down there and I get off the runway so he can get the other guy in. And that's why I like the maneuverability of this airplane. It makes that kind of stuff easy to do. Man, it's wanting a lot of left rudder. There's definitely some wind, crosswind. That wasn't bad.
Good.
Barely felt that one. Nose wheels shimmying. The nose wheel shimmy.
Yeah, a little wonky wonk.
The canopy and the nose wheel are the weakest parts of this airplane. Oh, I missed the center line by a mile though. That was pretty sloppy. Do need some practice. That was sloppy. Right turn Alpha 3, monitor ground point 8.
4 Delta Golf, exited Alpha 3, taxi to parking Alpha and Charlie.
Right on Alpha 3, Alpha to Charlie, 4 Delta Golf.
Big old lump of snow there. That's just stupid. Especially if that had ice on it, you could break something. And this airplane, because of the gearbox, has a clutch in it. That's why that clutch is there. If you hit something, the clutch will keep it from transmitting that shock all the way down through the crankshaft. On older engines like Lycomings, like they put in Cessnas, at the back of the crankshaft, there's a big bolt that holds it in. If you hit that propeller against something, it can jerk that bolt. And like a year later, you're flying along and that bolt works loose and your crankshaft flies out and you're done.
That would not be good.
So if you hit the least little thing with your propeller on an engine like that, you hit a puddle of water, or you hit some of the snow, or you hit a goose, it's a mandatory tear down of the engine, costs thousands of dollars.
Oh.
This one, it'll break the propeller blade. Those blades are fiberglass, so the blade will probably shatter, but the engine gets preserved because the clutch will just capture all that, so you don't have that expensive tear down to do.
Distributes the force.
Yeah, it just catches it all. And the propeller will eat some of it. And those blades aren't cheap. You really don't want to break one of those. Those $1,000 blades.
Yeah.
They're very expensive. They're very light. Everything on this airplane was light because they had to meet a weight limit. There was a certain set of rules where you didn't have to fly. You didn't have to have a medical to fly. But the airplane had to be grossed at under 1,320 pounds, and it could cruise no faster than 120 knots. So they always want to keep airplanes light. Always, always. But when they're trying for the LSA, you don't want to make it 1,320 pounds with nobody in it, because then that's useless. So they got nice light blades. It's a light engine. It's a tiny little engine. It's 100 horsepower. It looks like a lawnmower engine. It's low 4-cylinder. It's just not very big at all. It's a pretty nice engine. They're spendy, really expensive engine. It's a dry sump engine, which took some getting used to for the oil changes. Car out of my way. We're coming in. I guess I'll turn the video off. Thanks for riding along, folks.